Hey, I'm JRLA. Welcome back to another Level Up Business podcast. Today, I am joined by Rory Sylvia. Rory is the founder of The Ways We Work, where he applies the RIDE framework. And our conversation today is going to tap into both our hearts and our minds as we explore what it means to lead in the modern workplace. That's because exponential change is impacting all of us. Exponential change can feel confusing. It can feel chaotic. It can feel complex because the world, the way we work, the ways we work with our teams. It is being shaped by AI. It is being reshaped by AI. But first, if you're a B2B entrepreneur who has a story to share, who has unique wisdom to share like Rory, send me a text right now, 832-240-1922, because I want to show you how easy it is for you to unlock, to capture, to share, to amplify your unique wisdom by turning video content, just like the one you're watching right now, into a best-selling book in just 90 days. Let's get into the conversation with Rory. You know, we were talking about this, how you and I met, 15-minute connection call. And you're like, who's this guy taking 15 minutes to connect with people? And here we are with this podcast conversation, because you were sharing some things that I really connected with, man. I really resonated with.
All right. I'd love to hear that. What
And
what were you resonating with?
well, it's just your whole point of like people and culture, and how I believe in today's age of AI, it's the people, it's the culture, it's the humanity that we're probably going to need to double down on.
hmm
A lot of people are feeling a little confused, even in the entrepreneurial space. It's like everything is happening at a pace, at a speed that we've never had to navigate before. And so it's that idea of confusion and complexity. And if we don't at least address those, then we're going to end up in some sort of chaos. And
Right.
that doesn't bode so well, which is where, I mean, it's how you and I connected. It was through another human being. It was through
Right.
Sarah. She was like, hey, you two need to connect for a conversation. We had a 15-minute conversation, and here we are, because you've got a really interesting framework that I want to dive into, which is around RIDE.
Yeah. Where do you want to start?
Where do I want to start? There's a lot of places that we could start
Yeah.
with this. I want to start with, let's start with what you're seeing, the problem when it comes to the way teams, quote unquote, work. Because a lot of this, the way we work,
Right.
misses what we would say the traditional training model, coaching model that has tried to fix the problem, but perhaps has made the problem even worse as we moved into this age of AI. What are you seeing on your front there, dude?
Yeah. So when I think of like the ways we work, yeah, that's my company name for a reason. I think we tend to work the ways we do because usually we've always done it that way, or a manager, leader, founder, parent told us to. And a lot of the times we don't take the time to question why we're doing that, or we continue doing things that aren't serving us anymore. And this is, personal life, but also professional. And I'm all about helping teams specifically. That's what I want to help is teams and leaders learning to look at the things that are working and not working, be able to talk about that out in the open, and then celebrate those things that are working and the things that aren't without applying blame. Do something about it. So
Yeah.
generate experiments to fix things and make them better. And I think we've
Right.
been coasting along for a long time without sharing power with teams. There's been a lot of like the power over the Theory X manager style of do what I say. The manager has, they have to have the perfect strategy, develop all the people, see around all the corners. It's such a heavy burden. And I think we've unintentionally made managers into a bottleneck, and that's got to change.
Well, that's where my follow up to this, and it comes back to what I was mentioning before. It's this idea of the world, for that matter, is becoming more confusing. It's becoming more complex, and we're feeling that
hmm
chaos at a macro level. But then that's also moving into teams, and then the idea of the leader. Why do you think that we keep defaulting to what you referenced before, the way we've always done it. Because if I'm looking out 3 years from now, 5 years from now, let's say it's 2030, it's hard to even perceive how AI is going to reshape the world of work, the world of business. It's like the internet reshaped everything back in
Hmm.
1994 to this point in time, which is 31 years, but we're seeing that idea of a reshaping at an even more faster pace. But why is it that we default to the way we've always done it?
Probably because it's comfortable. We know
Hmm.
it. I was listening to a podcast the other day and they were talking about how like data shows that people will stay in toxic relationships rather than break up and move on because they prefer a knowable, a known pain to the unknown. So yeah, I think it's just that the resistance is it's comfortable and change is scary. Like we say, get comfortable with change. That's hard. I think it's more like make peace with like change is going to happen. Okay, how am I going to navigate this?
Yeah, well, that reminds me of Audrey, who's our operations lead here. We had a very similar conversation. It was the idea of people would prefer a familiar hell to stay in that familiar hell than to move into an unknown heaven,
Hmm.
because it's what we know. And I think when it comes to this idea of culture, for that matter, what role is culture going to play, particularly in entrepreneurial firms that I think have the potential to be more agile, to be more nimble, to be more adaptive than, say, the corporate world, where structure and biases and beliefs and some of the complexity of history, for that matter, keep them stuck. But when you think about culture, how is culture, what role is that going to play for entrepreneurial firms in this age of AI, for the leader and for the teams?
Well, like you said, things are speeding up. So I think sense making is going to be everything. And
What does
being
that
able to,
mean?
like,
What does that mean? Sense making.
making sense of what's happening around you, whether it's what's on the skyline for your business, what's happening in my business right in front of me, what are all the ways we work together. And like when I say the ways we work, how we meet, collaborate, communicate, strategize, prioritize, share information, share power, recognize, it's everything. Literally
Oh, you
all the
just
ways
counted it
we
out. There's
work.
like 8 different systems right
Right. And,
there.
and
In,
there's
in and of
many
itself.
more depending on what's relevant to you and your business or your system.
I'm going to roll back because you mentioned something before about this idea of experimentation, and you recently wrote on LinkedIn
Hmm.
that experimentation or experiments, they don't sound like outcomes. And so iterating, experimenting, optimizing. If I think about my background in digital anthropology, looking at marketing, sales, tech, human behavior, experimentation has been a big part of that. Let's test, let's try, let's iterate, let's learn, let's apply those new learnings. Let's keep doing the good things that work. Let's stop doing the things that don't work. But experiments, I think for some, they might not sound like outcomes, and that can make people nervous. And so we just, once again, we default to what we know. Why is that? Where does experimentation become the the forcing factor to move people beyond the comfort zone into the growth zone, because growth never happens in the comfort zone to begin with?
Right. So I think of experimenting as so a lot of companies or anybody, we have a strategy for our business. Your strategy is essentially an informed experiment. You don't know it's going to be successful, and hopefully good stuff comes of it. So really that is an experiment just in a different, a different coat. And when I think of like myself getting me to move or getting other people to move, when we think of change, we think it's going to be this permanent thing. But if I do this, it's over. But it's important to think of experimenting as with this phrase safe to try. So safe to try helps unlock the move to get to where we're actually experimenting. And for safe to try, I think of there's two kind of doors. There's a one-way door. Maybe I'm running an experiment. If I go through that door, the door locks behind me. I'm stuck with the outcome. That's more like a bet. and I hope it works. And then the other kind of door is like a two-way door, a revolving door. I can run an experiment. If I walk through that door and I don't like it, I can go right back. So, for example, like super low key experiment, if a team's meetings suck, meaning usually like they start late, they end late, the manager rolls in 10 minutes late and like, sorry, I'm late, everybody, disturbs everything. Like, you're not getting the thing done, then you can do a small experiment like work for the next 30, 60 days. We're going to be ruthlessly disciplined with starting on time, ending on time, once we hit the objective and the meeting. Great, super simple experiment. And, my hypothesis is that by doing this, we're going to get disciplined. We're going to respect each other's time. We're going to become more efficient. But the cool thing about that experiment is if we do that and it doesn't work, we can go back to how it was. But if it does work, great. Now we're at a new good point. But then I often find with experiments that other cool stuff happens as a result of it that you weren't planning for. And this is where innovation comes in. So I might realize, oh, wow, all these other teams around me are noticing that our team, our meetings are super disciplined. We're boundaried. We hold that boundary and we do that when we go out into their meetings. And they're like, whoa, Rory's holding the boundary. He's leaving at the top of the hour. Oh my God. And it can have a rippling effect. It could build, more trust, safety. You just don't know. So that's the beauty of the experiments is it's small, safe to try. Yeah, I can handle this for a little bit and I can always go back to how it was.
Is this idea of experimentation, they're small experiments. They're not big and they're not these bets. And I like the way you framed this as a door. It's like I can walk through that door, I can try it on 30 days, and if I don't like the way it fits, it's kind of like a jacket, right? It's like I get a new sport coat. I want to try it
Yeah.
on. I want to see how it fits. I want to see it. Do I really like the way it makes me feel? Or because it could fit fantastic, but I just don't like the way I look in it. So I'm just going to put it back on the rack. I don't want that one. And then I want to try something else. But
I bet
these are
oh, go ahead.
no. Go ahead.
I bet you starting your first podcast was an experiment.
Are you kidding me? It was a massive experiment, and I've done 500 plus experiments since.
Yeah.
It's like every single podcast, we're testing or iterating these small little things, and even I've got two, and we've just relaunched the other one that we started. It was an experiment because I was launching my first book, Banking on Change, or my first book, Banking on Digital Growth. Actually, I've got two books, Banking on Digital Growth. Since we're talking about change, I'm thinking Banking on Change, but Banking on Digital Growth was my first book, and it was being published supposed to be published in April of 2020, and I had this big, speaking tour set up and ready to roll around the world, and we know what happened. COVID shut everything down, and it's like almost within a week, all the speaking tour got canceled. And so we talked to the publisher, we hit the pause on the book, we waited a couple of weeks, and we were like, we got to get this book to market now. It's COVID, title's Banking on Digital Growth, everything was being forced to go digital. And so, yeah, the entire podcast was nothing more than an experiment, but there was a forcing function though that shifted that. And I think what has happened since COVID, since things have quote unquote normalized again, there's no forcing function. There's a lot of innovation that I think that came out of that, particularly with the way we work. Coming back to your company's name, and so we have defaulted to either what has happened post COVID as kind of like that new status quo, or in some cases, I've seen organizations even flip back to pre-COVID methodology, which is completely out of, I think, line with where the world is going now with the age of AI.
Right.
It's like COVID was a trial run for all of the changes that would happen this decade. Maybe I'm completely off with that, but it's just in hindsight now that we got 5 years behind us. It's like, oh, you thought COVID was hard. Just wait until we add this whole new thing, artificial intelligence, because that was November 30th, 2022, that ChatGPT came onto the scene, or 2023. It was 2023, I believe.
Been that long. Wow.
Yeah. And everything, it's like the iterations that are coming out of that. Is it because technology is moving at an exponential rate and we're human beings and our minds perceive the world linearly? So it's like you got technology doing this exponential growth curve. You got people thinking linearly, and so you get this gap, And that's where those three C's, the confusion, the complexity, and the chaos start creeping in.
I think that technology makes like the need more stark and obvious. Like we have all this new technology, for example, for teaming, like Slack or tools that like Atlassian drops that are great collaboration tools. And then people go to hop on them like Slack, and then they try to use it like Skype, just IMing people. And it's like, no, this is a new collaboration tool. It's designed to be used out in the open. So a lot of teams try to do what they were already doing poorly,
Oh,
communicating in that case, in the same way with new technology. And it's, oh, this doesn't work. This sucks. So I think, yeah, I think technology makes the need more stark to be able to adapt and experiment and try new things. But I think the need was always there. And maybe it's a generational shift too with some of the younger generations who are like, hey, I want to join this company and feel useful immediately. I don't want to be doing copies or whatever as an intern. Like I have a brilliant brain too. Put me to work, use me. And I think people are demanding more of that now. And also like the smartest companies are realizing like you can have a team and like a lead or a high performer, a couple of them dragging a team behind them, or you can have 10 people running fast together. It's a no-brainer.
mm. Well, it's that African parable. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And it does. I
Mm.
think it's a matter. And I've been doing a lot of keynotes on this from my second book, Banking on Change, which is looking out at the world and saying, okay, here's everything that has happened since 1994. And I have this hypothesis of how old you were in 1994 is directly influencing how you're perceiving the world today. So, for
Mm.
example, if you were 30 to 40 in 1994, you're now going to be between the ages of 60 and 70 in 1994. The irony of that is now I'm 43 in this whole new age of AI, and I'm finding myself having to challenge my own personal beliefs, my own personal biases, so that I can rework my work in context of these new tool sets. And your example of Slack, if we're communicating it like it's Skype or that past belief, I see that being true as well when it comes to utilizing platforms like Chat GPT. It's like
Mhm.
people are Googling Chat GPT as of thinking of it being this back and forth iteration, which is where I think your ride framework provides perspective, the sum of context and framing. It provides a path forward because RIDE is the acronym for Reflect, Ideate, Design, Experiment. There's a rhythm here, but why is that rhythm, Reflect, Ideate, Design, Experiment, why is this rhythm so important to think about contextually as we're moving forward into this new way of working?
Mm.
Because, like you said, technology probably amplifies some of the underlying pain that was already there. It's just perhaps bringing it to light faster than what we'd have seen otherwise.
Yeah. So I think when I think of the ride framework, and it's not something brilliant that I created, I just wanted to simplify this for people. It's like design thinking, but for teams. So a way for teams to continuously improve, to continuously sense make, to bring that back, and you get together and for example, starting with reflect, it's sitting down and okay, in our ways of working or in our team, our marketing, our strategy, whatever it is, what's been working and what hasn't been working. Let's get alignment and shared consciousness around that before we solve. So we're just getting that all out on the table. We have a regular pressure release valve to talk about the things that aren't working. And then I was pressing the valve, by the way, or the button.
Yeah, I want to press that valve, except it's the pause button. I want
Yeah.
to pause you on this point because what's the alternative? If we
Mm.
don't pause, if we don't review, if we don't reflect, and we just keep going, we just keep doing, we don't release the pressure. What's the alternative? What happens if we don't stop?
That's why you're excited right now. People explode. People explode. They talk shit around the water cooler. They find a new job. They get resentful. They quiet quit, which we use, when that came out, try to blame the employees. It's not their fault. It's your fault. So people do all the things except deal with the conflict usually, or I use the word tension. It's just attention just being a piece of data telling you that something's not working and there's an opportunity to improve.
I like
So
that. I like the way you mentioned the conflict is tension, but this tension is data. And we've talked about this on another podcast episode. When you think about the idea of conflict, and you're talking to a guy who came from a very conflict avoidant family. So that was kind of my MO. You too. Okay. And so we avoid conflict at all costs because it makes us feel uncomfortable. But the way that I look at conflict now is conflict, that's where the diamonds are formed. Diamonds are formed under pressure. And if we can at least take the conflict, the tension, and we approach that from a positive and a productive place, we're going to come out on the other side. And that's where the idea of the reflect, the review, because now we know what happens if we don't, but what do we get out of that? What's the next piece of this? Because that's where we can ideate, design, and experiment, continue us through the right framework.
sure. Yeah, so we got to get a shared consciousness of what's happening. And an example of this working and actually leading to innovation was I reflected, and I told you about this when we first met a few months back, and I was like, for my business, I've been relying on my network too much, which has been good, but also it can be feast or famine. Okay, that's a piece of data. Attention, it's not really working. I don't like this. What can I do differently? So I
Mm-hmm.
just decided to do a 90-day experiment. Well, actually, I'll get to that. So I reflected, and then I went to the ideate stage. Okay, what could I do to get more business? I could pump my network. I could write a book. I could go on JR's podcast. I didn't actually think of that then. I could start a podcast. I could go on LinkedIn and post regularly, engage regularly. And I ended up designing an experiment around just doing the LinkedIn posting and engaging for 90 days. So it's important that it's time bound to like
Mm.
10 iterations or at least 60 days. So you can get through what Brene Brown calls the F in first tries, where you're like,
Yes.
this sucks, this is stupid, it'll never work. You got to get through that part of the change curve. Um, and so I decided to do that. And so I started posting on LinkedIn every day and engaging with people in the comments. And that led to me unexpectedly meeting you. And here I am. I didn't go out like I'm going to get on JR's podcast. This is how I'm going to do it.
Well, no, and I think that's a really important point is you identified something wasn't working, but then you had a hypothesis. This even gets into, I know it's super practical, super tactical, but we're working with another organization here at Level Up Business that does A/B testing of websites utilizing AI. So it's very scientific method driven, and it's almost like it takes us back to the ninth grade. Let's just pause for a moment. Why might the scientific method, rejection might be too strong of a word, but perhaps it's not in the general consciousness of a team when it comes to making things even better than what they were before.
I think for whatever reason, we don't like to make things explicit. And this is making them explicit. Usually, like we said, teams work they do because how they do because they've always done it. And it's often like if you join a team, you're trying to adapt to what the manager needs and wants or their style versus like this is making it explicit for the whole team. And you know, and I did my experiment for my business. That's fine. But for a team, going back to that pressure release valve, if we can surface the things that aren't working, great. This is in service of moving our team forward. It's not just what the manager wants or thinks. This is what the team is going to collectively try and experiment on to improve how they're working together, how they're strategizing, how they're making money.
Let's come back to your experiment here of utilizing LinkedIn, because I think it's a very interesting and important topic that I didn't even think would come up in today's conversation. But since you broached the subject, the idea of the individual brand of a leader, and the role that can play in making connections with ideal prospects and having conversations, and how that unlocks new opportunities that did not exist before. What has your 90-day experiment led to on LinkedIn? Let's roll back. Let's get very practical. Let's get very tactical on this, because it is something that I see as a growth opportunity for other, specifically entrepreneurial leaders, to apply to level up their business. What did you
Can you
do?
can you frame the question again? Sorry.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
got
No, no,
lost.
no, no, no. I'm going to roll this back. When it comes to how you have applied this experiment on LinkedIn to grow your business, I think it's a very important topic for other entrepreneurial leaders to consider, because the individual brand of a leader can be more influential than just their business brand. But it requires a different set of behaviors, which starts with by establishing a different set of beliefs, because we know how much belief drives behavior. What has this experiment yielded for you over the period of time, because it is a constrained experiment?
Sure. So my hypothesis was, or my goal was even just to get like one new piece of business. And even if I don't, like I'm going to learn a ton.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's been 8 or 9 weeks so far. It feels like it's been longer. It hasn't even been the whole experiment, but I've grown my following by like 150%, lots of impressions, engagements, whatever. I've met a lot of really cool, just awesome people, which has led to like more than 25 coffee chat connections. It's networking with people I would never network with usually, who are like, "Oh, you know what? What you do sounds really good. I think this would be great to connect you with so and so." And then you just get more connections and more connections. It's a new way of thinking about marketing for me, and marketing is something I never used to, I never would have touched. I was scared of it, and made marketing approachable because I've been able to start putting my foot in the water a little bit at a time. Um,
Yeah.
from someone I followed, I ended up reading a marketing book, and I'm putting together a free training thing. So it's just leading to this podcast with you. And I was telling my wife last night, another unexpected positive from it has just helped sharpen how I talk about my work and the insights I'm having. And because I'm posting most days or scheduling things out a week or whatever, like it's like I've got a pilot light going all the time. And
Yeah.
you have an interaction happen and like, oh, that's something to write about there. And it's exciting. So it's like little creative dopamine hits. And it's just
So
been super fruitful so far.
connections lead to conversations. Conversations lead to content co-creation opportunities such as this one.
Hmm.
That content co-creation then opens up entirely new opportunities to make more connections, and eventually there's going to be a path to conversion. It's Pete Caputa, actually, who he's the CEO over at Databox. Pete published this, and I just pulled this up on LinkedIn. He literally published it 1 hour ago, and I'm just going to read this for context. I hope my bad. Okay, 10%. Just the low battery just came up on my laptop. He said, I have published 330 LinkedIn posts in the last 365 days that have garnered 2.9 million impressions and 37,000 engagements. During this time, I have received 18,000 profile views and have grown my follower count to more than 33,000. More importantly, I'm able to drive conversions on Databox's marketing efforts, help us acquire customers, and nurture relationships with our customers and partners. And he continues, I want to get your take on this. He says, quote, why every CEO or even every business professional doesn't do this is beyond me. What's the belief that holds other entrepreneurial leaders back from, we'll just
Mm.
say, putting themselves out there? Because Pete, his first point, he treats this like, and it sounds very similar to you, he's treating this like a public business diary. So what's hold people back from hitting the publish button, hitting the record button, hitting the send on a
Hmm.
connection, on a DM? Because there are beliefs here.
Yeah, I mean, speaking for myself, I'm not worthy of this. I don't have the expertise to talk about this thing. People are going to judge me, but in reality, like nobody cares. Like I don't know about you, but do you like zealously follow anybody and like comb through their posts every day to see what they're doing and all their comments?
No, and I'm so glad that you brought up the point no one cares, because like I used to really care, and I was talking about this with Chris Walker on a recent podcast. This idea of external validation seeking, and it's something I see with a lot of entrepreneurs, and that goes back into family of origin, childhood, environments, etc. And Chris and I were talking about, yeah, like Chris was like, I love when I get, 1,000 likes on a post. But then he got to a point, and I also got to a point to where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. It's like I'm seeking all this validation outside of myself when it's like, no, that has to start here. It has to start internally because no one gives a shit. Like that's the honest truth. No one gives a shit. And if we're thinking about like what everyone else thinks, then we're not playing the proper game. I was just in this interesting. I was working with a bunch of 7th and 8th graders recently at a career day, and I was speaking on the idea of entrepreneurship. And a lot of it was a very new subject, but it wasn't about like starting a business. It was about communication. And I was talking about how communication, whether you're in entrepreneurship or not, the communication is the key to human relationship. And I was like, how do you communicate with your friends? And everyone was like, well, we text. I'm like, you don't have conversations? And I was kind of leading the conversation a bit, and I was very mindful of it, but they're like, a couple people raised their hand, they talk on the phone. But I'm like, did you realize when you walked in this classroom, I shook every single one of your hand. I looked you in the eye. I asked what your name was, and I said your name back to you. They're like, yeah. I was like, did any of the other, because there was like 5 rotations during this career day. Like, did any of the other speakers do the same for you? They said, no. I said, how did it make you feel when I shook your hand and I said your name back? Like I was seen, I was heard. I said, exactly. So there are all of these little different nuances, because one of the things that we were talking about with communication was, why are we scared to come up in front of the class? Because I had one kid, each class, come up and literally sit down in a chair in front of the class. There was a microphone, and they were going to interview me on a podcast. And they were like, and it was, I just need one. And it said, I set the stage. One of you by the end of the class is going to come up and interview me. And so I set the expectation. And every single class didn't have a problem with someone volunteering, but every single kid was like, yeah, I'm a little scared. I'm a little nervous. I'm like, here's the thing. No one else in this room exists. It's just you and me right now for the next 5 minutes, because they don't care about you. In the next hour, no one's going to remember this conversation. In the next week, no one's going to remember this. And I think how much of this idea, because it's really fear of judgment, right?
Right.
So you felt this way. You have now articulated and have shared what was holding you back, which I've heard from dozens of other entrepreneurs. We're actually putting together some pattern matching around this. We're going to be doing a survey, because I'm like, wait a minute. If we have all of this, and as you do, if we have all of this unique wisdom, all of this unique knowledge, all of this unique insight, but we're sharing it because of some internal self-limiting belief or bias, we're not just doing ourselves a disservice. More importantly, we're doing the people that we could help a disservice. Am I off on my thinking here? I want to get your take on this.
No, you're not. And I was just reflecting as you're talking, like, oh my God, I did it in this. Like when you're like, tell me about the ride framework. And I was like, oh, it's nothing that special. And like, I'm already doing it.
Do that.
Yeah.
You did do that.
I'm
yes.
like, I'm just I'm setting y'all up for like a low letdown or whatever. Because I'm already like, that was me being in my head worrying about judgment, which is stupid and a waste of time. But at the end of the day, it's like you can cripple yourself your whole life worrying about what people are going to think, but it's just a fucking waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, of course you're balancing, being a good human, hopefully within that. But
I think that's the thing. If you're operating from a place of care and you're truly, and I wrote about this in my first book, it's a 4-word mantra. If you're truly wanting to help first and sell second, and you're operating from a place of care, meaning that you're committing to a cause greater than the present moment, you're being adaptable, you're being resilient, and your energy is emotion and motion. And if your energy is always looking to ascend and not descend, I think it's okay to share what you know, to share what you have learned, to share your unique perspective, which is the sum of your lived, learned, and shared experiences. And I think that's the thing. It's like, as you're talking through this, I'm so happy the way this is unfolding, because this is you're going to help other people. Like, dude, I know where he's at because I'm right there too. And even the fact that you recalled, like, I did it. yeah, I kind of like put my own little methodology. I was like, it's not that big of a deal.
Stupid. Don't buy from me.
But here's the thing, like this is the authenticity. This is authentic intelligence in real time unfolding right here. And I'm more interested in authentic intelligence than artificial intelligence. And unique wisdom is your unique perspective, your live, learn, shared experiences, but your unique method. That's your ride framework. And I think it's so important because it's how you effectively communicate your unique perspective. But your ride framework, it came through literally applying your ride framework. It came from reflecting, ideating, designing, and experimenting. Because how many iterations did it take to come up with ride?
Yesterday, go back to my chat GPT pages. I was like, give me a fun acronym. And we came up with all these stupid ones. And then I said ride to my wife. I was like, what do you think about ride? And she's like, that's good. And I was like, I don't know. This is so stupid. And then like a few days later, I came around to it. And now I'm like, yeah, ride. That's the thing. But like you said, it was something I was already doing in my work, but I didn't have like a simplified way to convey this complex. What felt like a complex thing. I needed just an easy way to talk about it. And that's the whole point for teams and people. Here's a easy, repeatable thing that you can use when things start feeling out of whack. Like, oh, we need to make sense of this, and then figure out a way forward.
Well, like, do you mind if I riff on this with you? Because I'm
Riff.
just having a blast now that we're really into something like, because I believe strongly in methodologies and particularly acronyms. And in both of my books, and even in the third book that I'm working on, they're littered with acronyms and alliteration because it's something that is memorable. It's like I said, that was the thing that really stood out for me in our first conversation was you talked about this whole idea of like ride. And it's like, you tie this back to the African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Now you can tie this back into your own unique method and your perspective. If you want to go fast, ride alone. If you want to go far, ride together.
Let's ride.
Yeah, let's ride. It's like the team
Tagline.
that learns. Yeah, the team that learns together grows together. The team that rides together grows together. So there's this whole other like underlying narrative structure that you can use in your own experimentation for communication.
Yeah. And
So
you just reminded me. I was talking to a client yesterday, and we'd gone through this day-long workshop I do with the RIDE framework, and the reflection piece. Like I used a retrospective, so we just looking back at a past time, the last 30 days of this team working together, and looking at what's working and what's not. And one of the guys on the team was like, "We don't need to talk about what's working. Like we already know." And I was like, "That's great. That's your experience, and we're gonna do this." And then so we did it. And it's been, we went through the whole retrospective. They designed some experiments, and it's been about a month. And I was talking to the leader yesterday, and he's like, "You're not going to believe this. Just from going in depth on the stuff that was working well, I think our team has realized how much trust we actually had in each other that we didn't know we had. And as the manager in my one-on-ones, I haven't had anybody bring any drama in a month because they're
wow.
taking care of it out in the open. So they're saying, for the good of our team for this project, like JR, this thing happened. You weren't trying to do anything wrong, but it had this impact. So what can we do differently? So they're
Yeah.
supporting each other differently. And it was just from that small piece of this workshop of the framework of just let's actually take the time to look at what's working and whatnot and talk about it.
You know, Roy, I really appreciate the unique wisdom that you've shared. It's been good riding. We're going to stay on that. It's been good riding with you today. As we wrap up, what's the best way for someone to connect with you, reach out,
Mm.
say hello, that they want to ride with you? They want to ride, help you come along and let you ride with their team too.
You can reach out on LinkedIn. Just look up Rory Sylvia, my name here. Or you can go to my website, www.thewayswework.com. Very, very easy to remember. So yeah, that's the easiest way.
That's it.
But we're
Connect with
come
Rory.
engage with me on LinkedIn. Let's talk.
There you
I'm
go.
down
Yeah,
to
just
connect with
connect with
anybody.
them. Yeah, connect with them, have a conversation, ride together with Rory. Rory, man, I appreciate you for joining me for another Level Up Business podcast. It's been a lot of fun today.
Thanks for having me, JR. This is really fun.
Thanks again for joining me for today's Level Up Business podcast, to learn, to grow, to level up together with Rory's unique wisdom. If you are a B2B entrepreneur who is ready to elevate your brand's influence so that you can increase your revenue, send me a text right now, 832-240-1922. It's because I want to show you how quick and easy it is for you to unlock, to capture, to amplify your unique wisdom by turning video content just like the one you're watching right now into a best-selling book in just 90 days.